Well, let me begin by I don't sell it or benefit from any way, shape, or form business wise, whether it goes up or down. It's strictly from a financial planning viewpoint and all. But let me just tell a quick story, if I may, Danielle, because I think it
Please.
can go a long way to give people an idea what we can look forward to in gold. When I entered the brokerage business way back in the dinosaur days of 1984, the Dow had only gone between 700 and 1,000 for 13 years. In fact, there was such bearishness on Wall Street that Business Week ran a famous magazine cover saying equities are dead. And then this young man came out of Janesville, Georgia, who no one knew of at the time and certainly didn't know what he was talking about. His name was Robert Prechter Jr., and he put out something called the Elliott Wave Theory. And he claimed that the Dow was going to 3,600. And they ridiculed him. In fact, they made fun of him on the Wall Street Week and the old shows and all. Well, he would prove to be not correct and then some. But the perception then was it was so impossible to think that if a market stayed for so long between two levels, how can it go to that, you let alone where it ended up going? The same thinking is for a lot of people that have been involved in the gold and silver market for a lot of years. We did trade basically in a fairly range for a lot of years. And therefore, the assumption is, well, it just has to stay that way. Well, I think that's one argument. But the bigger argument, and what's more important for this is the fact that the people who have money, and this is why I never got involved with crypto, the world that has the money is central banks. Deserving or not, right or wrong, they have the most money. And the one thing that they have done for several years now, over and over again, is to continue to accumulate and buy gold. And Daniela, it's not a flipping opportunity. There's not some place that they can go and make money selling it. They're buying it for very key reasons. And they're buying it for the arguments that bulls like me have had, that we're going to end up someday having to use it again, at least in the area of the world where growth is happening in Asia and all, as money, because money here is really not worth that much anymore. So what I think people have to do is understand this. Yes, we went into a parabolic race. Yes, I even said there had to be a hard correction from that. We had it. But I'm going to tell you something else. And you know I'm not normally aggressively bullish when I'm being interviewed. But what I like so much is you and I speak today about gold and silver. If the bears were going to take control again,
Yeah,
10 days ago, their opportunity presented it to themselves.
that's right.
The shutting of basically Asia of physical trading, where we know most of the physical is buying, if they were going to be able to seize control and knock it down a lot to whether make up for all these shorts they may have or whatever, it was I called it their battle of the bulge. And sure enough, a week ago, Monday and Tuesday, they knocked it fairly good. But by the end of Friday, and now when you and I speak today on Monday, we made it all back and then some. If you're a bear, you have to actually forget if you're bullish and ask what argument does the bear have going forward to think about it, especially now that mainstream Wall Street. I never thought I lived to see the day, Danielle, because they treat it like kryptonite for 41 of my 42 years, are now suggesting to people to put gold in your normal portfolio. I can't begin to tell people that if we just go from the 0.5% or 1%, which may exist, to 2 or 3%, gold price is going to double. So there's so many reasons to still be extremely bullish long-term, both for gold and silver. And the bears really have no argument anymore. They have some serious problems in front of them. The Crimex, which some still call the COMEX, and London, basically for decades through the paper market, manipulated the gold price and suppressed it when they could, and had it very advantageous to not have to worry too much about the physical market overtaking them. That doesn't exist anymore because trading basically moved out of those two areas to Asia. The growth in Shanghai and elsewhere really took their biggest tool away from them. And therefore, without that, they don't have the ability to suppress. The other thing that's real important, again, central banks are very large-scale buyers of gold. And we're also seeing now countries being concerned about repatriation. So some of the areas where they thought they can be. And now the latest news, and you know me, I've never spoken like this. People who don't know me, I've never been a conspiracist. I never talked about these hidden things and all. But now of all the things about the Epstein files to come out, that there's claims in there that he was stating that the gold in Fort Knox is really not there. I mean, that's just, it kind of makes you think about when you think about a year ago when Musk and him suddenly for a couple of days talked openly how we were going to go to Fort Knox and see the gold, and suddenly that disappeared. I kind of feel like somebody said, Mr. President, not a good idea. But what I'm just saying is there's so much more bullish fundamental strong arguments for gold now and silver that didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago. And let's not forget that we went through 40 years of a basically financial asset bubble where that was the play. And now those things are kind of blowing up. The bond market basically blew because we went from zero interest rates. People still have losses that bought bonds from 2-3 years. The Federal Reserve has $1 trillion loss sitting on its book right now and all. The biggest competition it had in the last couple of years that was stealing interest, crypto, NFTs are blowing up, meme coins are blowing up, and much of crypto is blowing up. And don't confuse Bitcoin and things like it with stable coins. That's a different story and all. So it is really a near steal perfect storm. And so when you see people who go in broke and 5 years later they're worth $30 million, and they're the people you think are passing the laws and going to make your country better off, and et cetera, that's just another reason why people are resorting back to gold and all, because they can't trust the dollar anymore. The once great nation, listen, I understand the Magna argument. I'm married to one. She's in the other room, okay? I'm not anti-Trump. I don't have the syndrome, but I understand what they were kind of hoping for, that we can return to something. But the horse is out of the barn. The troubles can't be stuffed back and put back in. And that is being seen by people outside, especially in Asia, and why they want to move away from the dollar. And they knew another fiat currency was not the answer. And that's why they are so interested in gold right now. When I started in 1984, I didn't know what $1 trillion was because we didn't have $1 trillion anything. We didn't have $1 trillion debt. We didn't have $1 trillion nothing. 64 trillion. This is the one thing I want to tell your listeners that they should tell anybody that's telling them to stay bullish. At 64 trillion and a 5% interest, that means we'll have a yearly interest cost of over $3 trillion. The best this country has ever done was $5 trillion, 200 billion in income. So let's say in 10 years it gets up to $6 trillion. Half of all our income will go to pay an interest expense. There is no conceivable way that the government that you're used to now can operate in the same manner under those conditions. And there's nothing happening on any front to slow that down or stop it. In fact, it's getting worse. We spent the fastest time in an additional $1 trillion to our deficit in the last trillion. And before we know it, before maybe even the summer's over, we're going to be talking about 40 trillion. And this may be not looked at hard here at the moment, but I can tell you people outside of the dollar and all is looking at it. And that's another reason why they're looking to own gold.
The $200 move, what's more important about that, in my opinion, is the percentage move. $200 move at $5,000 gold is less significant than a $200 move at $1,000 gold. So it's more about the percentage move. But you're right. You and I have been talking a while, and $200 in a move is quite significant. We've really haven't seen that much. So, and that's partly because, or mostly because, of the volatility that we've seen here in this market, both up and down. So the reality is the gold market right now is much more volatile than it traditionally has been. It's a static metal. It's not something that is typically very volatile, and yet here we are. It is volatile right now. So that's a reality I think investors have to live with right now. And there's lots of reasons for that, but the bottom line is, you have to, our motto is ride the wave, buy the dips. So you're riding the volatility higher and you're buying the dips when the volatility is pushing prices lower. It's a fair point. Gold has had little mini manias here twice already since this bull market started. So I understand the point. I don't disagree. What my point is, in the bigger picture, gold, look at the chart. Gold is relatively unchanged relative to the NASDAQ. Now, this data is about 30 days old, as you and I talked, David, but look where it was in 2011. It was much, much higher. In my opinion, there has not been a rotation, and this is our investment thesis right now. There's not been a rotation from Main Street, Wall Street, into the gold sector, especially into the equities. And so therefore, in my opinion, we still have that yet to look forward to, because the general market has not had a bear market. It's not had a big correction. It's not gone into any kind of malaise or anything. So when that happens, those investors outside of the gold market right now are going to be looking and seeing all the green and the screen in the gold market, and they're going to be attracted to it, and some are going to come buy it. Know that I'll ever sell all my gold